Welcome to I'll Go If You Go, a Save the Redwoods League podcast. We're building community and illuminating how Californians from all walks of life think about and experience nature and conservation in the Redwoods and beyond. I'll go if you go, because when we explore together in community, the experience is all the more powerful. Please join us as we talk with Rebecca Al, Volunteer and Youth Programs Coordinator at National Park Service. She talks about her innovative work to create welcoming and belonging experiences in the workplace and outdoors. Welcome, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful and also very excited to have you, my friend, my colleague, my ally in the outdoors. It's just a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Likewise. Thank you.
I want to give a little background for those listening. Rebecca was born in Vietnam and immigrated to Atlanta, Georgia with her family at the age of 1. She's migrated all around the world before settling here in the Bay Area. And following her passion for education, she pursued a bachelor's in art and history and master's in museum studies, eventually landing her job at the National Park Service, where she is dedicated to promoting inclusivity in the outdoors, which is why I love you so much, and it's great to have you here. Rebecca, before we dive in, I'd love for you to share with everybody, what is your favorite memory of the Redwood Forest?
While I was in high school, one of my good friends got married at Big Sur. And, I'd been to the Redwoods before as a camp counselor, but never have I been able to camp on the beach and walk into the forest on nobody's time but my own. I still remember sitting in that car terrified as Katie drove us down this dirt road that was smaller than the width of the car to get to the beach. And when we hiked to the forest, it was musical. I could hear the wind singing between the trees, and I felt the harmony of dissonance. I was scared, but I was also excited, and it was perfect. It was then I knew that I wanted to be around these trees more.
It was a journey to get there and totally worth it when you got there.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I can relate. So listeners, I'll Go If You Go is a podcast that amplifies knowledge and experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in nature. Some of our listeners relate firsthand to our stories, and others build allyship by understanding our experiences. So for everyone listening, and most importantly for my guest, Rebecca, I want to take this moment to check in with you about how you've been dealing with the rising anti-Asian sentiments and violence that have occurred over the past year. Is there anything that you would like to share?
Thanks for bringing this up, Leslie, because I think it's really important to talk about this. And I will be honest, it hasn't been easy for me at all. I've experienced this harassment all my life, especially as a youth growing up here, whether it's because of my birth name as a child, which I don't even know if you know this, Leslie, but I was born with a different name. So my Chinese name, the name that I was given is Bao. And as a child named Bao Ao, you can imagine how horrible that was for me. So, it was either that or what type of clothing I wore to school or how my food smelled compared to others. And then now as an adult, just being a female and taking public transportation and walking alone out in the world, it has been scary. So, and me, my personality has been really carefree up until the pandemic. I used to smile at everyone and I used to not be so afraid. And if I hear a disturbing comment, I used to pretend I didn't speak any English or I would just outright ignore them. But now these instances have become so heightened, and those microaggressions that I used to face, or, everyday slights, indignities, put downs, and insults that people of color, women, LGBTQ, or those who are marginalized experience in their day-to-day interactions with people. it's turning into something that's more than just micro. It's becoming macro.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite honestly painful, especially since I have family and friends who have experienced them firsthand due to their status as essential workers during the pandemic. However,
thank you for sharing that, because I know that you're brave for sharing that with us. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to say, however, despite these attacks and indignities that we face, I've also been feeling very uplifted by my own community.
Mm-hmm.
My load is a lot lighter due to friends like yourself who have sat with me to listen to me, validate me, and comfort me. I know that I'm not alone, which is incredibly healing. I know that there are many others who are in the same situation as I am as an Asian woman, and those who are not, who stand right by me and in solidarity.
Thank you. And, I think this is a perfect segue into asking you about the upstander training for the National Park Service that you've co-created. Maybe you could start by sharing with us what's an upstander and how does it differ from a bystander?
So a bystander is a person who is present at an event or an incident, but does not take part. So just imagine you're standing there or you're within earsight of something, a disturbance. So you're a bystander at that moment. And an upstander is a person who speaks or acts in support of an individual or cause, particularly someone who intervenes on behalf of a person being attacked or bullied. But I think in bystander intervention and how to be an upstander in that practice, you kind of have to be situationally aware. So I think one of the best insights to this and building this practice for yourself is thinking about how you move through the world and what you're doing. Also, in part of thinking about how you're moving through the world, you also carry privilege with you. I spoke about how I identify as an Asian American woman. I am also able-bodied. So that privilege gives me an advantage over folks who are disabled or who face other challenges. So I think by just reflecting on those things is really powerful because it can kind of reframe the way that you travel through the world.
Could you maybe explore a little bit into what situational awareness cues we might look for?
So when you're a bystander, you're kind of in the event or the incident. So you hear about something or you see something. So you're using your senses, right? So you're using your eyes to see and you're using your ears to hear. In situational awareness, it's very much a similar concept in that you are using your senses and you're taking in the environment that's around you. That's particularly important for us folks who work in land management. Because you want to be able to see if there's a hole in the ground. You don't want to be falling into that hole.
Right.
If you hear something and, say that you're working in the field and you hear something, if it sounds strange, you might want to check it out. If it's just a little rustling, it might just be like a lizard or, a small bird or something. But I think practicing situational awareness can help us with our operational safety as folks who work in the field, in the Park Service.
Sure.
And it can also help us in our personal lives when you're at the grocery store and maybe, you hear a little shuffle or something between customers. You don't really know what's going on yet, but you want to be alert to that. If you hear something problematic and it feels not right to you, then there are ways for you to intervene, which is what this bystander or being an upstander training talks about. Like you utilize your senses to be acutely aware of the person who is facing harassment, whether you're giving them eye contact or you're actually approaching and intervening directly, or you're, say that the event passes and you notice that the person who was being harmed or harassed is in distress. There's tears flowing down their face, they're crying, or they look really distraught. You can then approach them and ask them if they're doing okay. I mean, just the fact that you're acknowledging their pain can diminish that pain immediately. And that's kind of like to the core of the training. That's what I really believe in.
What prompted you to do this and share it with others, because it's such a great resource?
This training doesn't come easy for me. I think it's because I care about people so much. The seed of wanting to protect others from harm was first sown into me when I was in the second grade. And I remember as a child, I was bullied a lot, and that hurt. But what hurt me even more was that there were times when I stood by and I was frozen in fear while others were bullied. And I knew then that I needed to do something about that. It's those kinds of injustices that we see, but maybe we don't ignore them, but we just, we don't quite know what to do. So with that memory, in the third grade, our school piloted a peer conflict mediation program, and I volunteered enthusiastically. I'd always wanted to try to avoid conflict through talking and other peaceful measures. And I hadn't realized it at the time, but those experiences shaped who I am deeply. So around that time, I had also met a school counselor named Jerome, and he was the most gentle person I'd ever met. He used to make us friendship bracelets.
I love friendship bracelets.
I still make them today. And then best of all, like he taught us to call out harm when we saw it. And I think my friends from Sherman Oaks Elementary will know who I'm talking about. He was quite a character. And so now as I'm older and I've had many more experiences under my belt, I wanted to apply all this knowledge into something more meaningful for the communities that I serve. So in my capacity as a volunteer coordinator at the National Park Service, I'm in a really unique position where I have the privilege of serving the public and my fellow colleagues. So as COVID-19 initially forced us all to shelter in place, stress and tensions were at an all-time high in our communities due to the pandemic, as you know. As the park was preparing to resume operations safely during this new reality, a group of supervisors at the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, the park unit that I work for, got together to brainstorm training to support staff returning to the field. And that's what you call the bystander intervention, or how to be an upstander intervention or training was suggested. And I knew that this was my chance to share knowledge that I'd been practicing with others for years. The knowledge that was given to me by sweet Jerome, and the knowledge that there's always one thing that we can do to protect someone who is facing harassment. And so with my supervisor's support, I helped develop, co-facilitate this training with a talented team of colleagues last summer. We also developed a facilitator's guide that has been shared with the region and with our nonprofit partner, the Parks Conservancy, as well.
That's wonderful. And I'd love to hopefully see this training for myself. And maybe more parks will take it as well and show it to their staff. Explore Redwoods is your portal into California's magical coast, redwood and giant sequoia forest. Visit exploreredwoods.org to learn what's available in more than 100 redwood parks and plan an unforgettable adventure. From hiking and biking trails to camping to swimming holes, this web-based app will get you there. Visit exploreredwoods.org. So moving on to our lightning round. This is that one moment where we ask you some funny questions and get to know a little bit about you in that way. And if you are ready to go, let's start.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. What's your superpower?
Well, I think I mentioned before in the terms of bystander intervention,
Yes.
my superpower is practicing that kind of situational awareness and helping out others when I see harm. That is my superpower. And then also baking cookies.
Great. And that makes you my superhero. What's your kryptonite?
Oh, it's definitely spiders and bullies.
What's your favorite museum in the world?
So that's a hard question. But I think a museum that people should definitely go and see at least once in their life is the Museum of Natural History. I love it there.
What's your favorite season?
I'll have to say that historically it's been summertime because I really like being warm. But I think as of lately, it's becoming spring. I really enjoy seeing the flowers and they just bring me so much joy.
Absolutely. The blooming life. What song automatically makes you move?
Anything by Justin Timberlake.
That's the cheerleader in you, I'm sure. What's the best thing you've ever eaten?
The best thing I've ever eaten is, I will have to say, French onion soup in Paris.
Ooh, la la. Who inspires you?
You inspire me.
Oh, you inspire me too, Rebecca. Would you rather have 9 lives or 9 cats?
Definitely 9 cats. The easiest question in the books.
To tie it all together, please share with our listeners why they should experience the redwoods.
I think if you've had the privilege to be among these trees, and just experience their majesty and their glory, it's like you're in another world, kind of. Like, I imagine myself being at Endor, and frolicking with the Ewoks, or imagine myself, if I'm looking at a particularly big redwood tree, speaking with the Great Deku Tree, from the Legend of Zelda series, which I'm a huge fan of.
I know the Ewoks, but I don't know the other one you're referring to.
The main character in the game is this character named Link, and he talks to this giant tree, and he's just getting all sorts of wisdom and sage. And that's how I feel around these trees. Like, I feel like I'm just around something that's bigger than myself, like quite literally bigger, but also spiritually bigger. And I'm just so grateful for that. Thank
you, Rebecca. This has been so great to have you here on this podcast and sharing your wisdom and experience and also your resilience with us. And I'm so proud to call you my friend. And also for taking us into your imagination with how the redwoods feel for you. So thank you. Thank you for listening to I'll Go If You Go, a Save the Redwoods League podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Parra, and may the forest be with you.
Yes.
Stay connected by following us on Instagram and Twitter at Save the Redwoods and on Facebook at facebook.com/Save the Redwoods League.